Good, yeah, this is great.
48.
How many?
48.
48, great, okay.
I'm waiting to see how long it'll take them.
Well, I'm sorry.
You're going to introduce Jim.
Yes, yeah. So when you're done, you can turn it over to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring the mic and hand it to you.
Okay, good.
You've done this before. You've done this before.
No, well, yeah, 5 years.
Right, enough.
I think we're going to want some more lights on.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
Is it all right the way it is?
Fine, yeah.
Okay.
As long as can you get into this all right? You're
Yeah.
all right? Yeah, okay.
I'm doing fine.
I didn't bring a pen or anything, but okay.
Well, I don't have a pen or anything.
It's all right.
I don't think I'll need anything. I've got a pencil here.
Okay.
Good morning, Men's Coffee. We still have a couple of people coming in, but we're going to get started here. Jim's co-pilot is here. Sharon, Jim's wife, and his co-pilot, so she's here today. And Helen Horowitz has joined us. And people are still coming in the door. So we've got a nice crowd. Next month, our presenter will be Jim Struve. Jim is new here. He's a graduate of West Point, 1 year behind Jim. But Jim said he didn't mess around with the plebes or the freshmen or whatever you call them up there, so he didn't know him too well. Jim has a BS in engineering from West Point and an MS in nuclear engineering from the University of Missouri. And from 1961 to 75, he served in the Army and retired as a major. It's going to be a good program, and I hope you all will be there. I went through his CV, and I didn't understand any of this nuclear stuff and whatever was in there, so I'll make it short and say his career was developing anti-missile weapons to protect us from incoming stuff. And he had a long career after his military service doing that. So you'll want to be here next week because, and even now it's more topical because just a month ago, Medvedev, the Russian, was talking about nukes. This week was the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima, and Trump is sending 2 subs close to Russia. I didn't know you told your enemy what you were going to do, but anyway, he noted that. And maybe our Secretary of Defense will give them the time and the place, and so they'll know exactly where the subs are. But anyway, that's another story. Let's see, since this is my last time to serve as head of this Men's Coffee, I want to thank some people. I want to thank Margaret Ernst. Margaret, stand up. Margaret helps arrange all of this. And he's not here now, but Delaney Russell handles putting all this stuff together. And Eldon Rucker served on our original committee. Eldon, thank you. And I want to thank all the men who have been presenters over the years. We've had some really top flight speakers, and I thank all of you for that. So now I'm going to turn the program over to Fred Beck, who is going to introduce our speaker, and he's going to be flying co-pilot too on this presentation. So, Fred.
I'll take that one. Great. Thanks, John. Yeah, just to introduce you to our speaker today, Sharon and Jim Dement joined us here at Cedar Field in 2023 after Jim had completed a career of over 30 years in the business of financial consulting. Sharon's career never stops, so you can take that as truth. Jim's career before he got into the finance business, he was gainfully employed in his first job as a company and then field officer in the United States Air Force, more specifically with the Strategic Air Command. And that's what we're about to hear about today. So give it a listen. Here's Jim DeMent.
Thank you. Can everybody in the back here just, if you detect that there are people that are not hearing, just let us know. You hear all right? You're doing all right, okay? Okay. Thank you. Okay. If everything works right, thanks to this guy right here, co-pilot, he has helped amazingly because I was working from about a 57-year-old yearbook from time spent in the Vietnam area. And so this is one, as it says here, one man's story. That whole scenario had 500,000 stories associated with it. There were about 500,000 people on the ground when we were asked to help. And so that's exactly what we tried to do. I think we can go ahead there. This is an introduction to the 99th Bomb Wing. That's the wing that we're still in during Vietnam. 99th Bomb Wing, the picture there you see is from about 1943, 44, and the 99th Bomb Wing was already up and running vigorously against Adolf Hitler. And so that 99th Bomb Wing has quite as Fred indicated here, a cherished lineage, and we tried very hard to live up to that for the guys. So I'll be describing a very small aspect of this, and then we'll leave some time for questions. So go ahead, Fred. Some people like to know how somebody becomes a pilot in the Air Force. This will be very brief. What you're looking at here is two planes that everybody going into the Air Force in those days, this was middle 60s, had to go through the same program. It lasted for 55 weeks. Sharon and I were up at Lubbock, Texas. That's where our pilot training was. The aircraft on the left is called a T-37, T for trainer. 37 was also used as an attack airplane in Vietnam, but it's an introductory type of plane. Room for two people, two engines, jet engines. We never had any propeller time. Jet engines, and right from the start, they do what everybody, I'm familiar with everybody in here just about, and we have a whole lot of people that went through basic training of one kind or another, and whether it was Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever it is, we all took a little bit of harassment in this. When we signed in, the first thing they did was see if they could take us on an introductory flight and see if they could make us get sick. So they'll say, Lieutenant DeMent, have you ever flown upside down? I said, no, I haven't done that. So they go through this routine a few times, and luckily I didn't get sick. Some of the guys did. But in any event, they're trying to harass us a little bit, and that worked out okay. The T-37 is designed to take you along fairly slowly. You reach the point that you have a individual, your solo, on flight 13. Now, why they call that flight 13, since 13 is an unlucky number, I don't know. But we were supposed to go on flight 13, and they were still harassing us a little bit. the instructor got up in front of the class and says, now, DeMint is going to solo tomorrow. If all goes well, the two of us are going to go up in this plane tomorrow, and if he's doing pretty well, looks like he can fly it by himself, I'm going to get out. We'll pull over here on the side, and we'll let him take this thing by himself. So I was thinking about that a little bit, and he says to the entire class in front of me, he says, by the way, remember to bring marshmallows tomorrow night. I said, what's all that about? He says, well, if DeMint has a rough landing and a fire starts, you'll have something that you can cook up. Yeah. And this is mission 13. Now, so we got through that, and that was the first 6 months of the program. And then we moved over to the one on the right, which is the T-38. Again, T for trainer. This one is a much higher expectations of the pilot as far as speed, altitude. It's a used airplane throughout the Air Force, and it's called the Talon, T-A-L-O-N. And so we got through that in another 6 months, and at that point, we were finished with, and we got our wings. You know, that's what you're really hoping for, is that you last and get the Air Force wings. So we got that done, but that wasn't the end of the pilot training, because you still had to go to the airplane that you were going to subsequently fly in the Air Force. And as you know, the Air Force has bombers and tankers and cargo planes and fighters and all of those. Everybody chose what he would prefer, and we chose, Sharon and I chose the B-52 bomber, and we'll get to that in just a second. Sharon was from upstate New York. I grew up in Ohio, so we looked for a B-52 base that was relatively close to home, and families. Sharon's mother was nearby. My family wasn't too far away. And so we took Westover Air Force Base, and that's in Springfield, Massachusetts. Anybody up that way? I suppose we have some people that have been in that area or maybe from that area. Nice area, pretty cold, but we enjoyed being there. Now what you see on the screen at the moment is the B-52 bomber, and that's the first B-52 bomber to arrive at Westover Air Force Base. Now that was in 1956. That bomber had already been on hand for 8 or 10 years before we got to Westover Air Force Base. And we have another film here. Yeah, this is the crew that delivered the B-52 to Westover Air Force Base. It's just about to land, as you can see, and that flight crew had brought it in from somewhere. It looks like it was pretty cold. The B-52 total production was 740 B-52s, and so this one could have come from the factory, or it could have come from another base. There were about 30 B-52 bases in those days. And what you can see, if you look at the airplane, off to the right, there are two engines, then another 2 engines, and then a large extra item. That extra item is an auxiliary fuel tank. And so when people say, well, how much fuel did that hold? 100 pounds, 500 pounds? Well, no, it was 3,000 gallons. It'll give you some idea of the size and scope of the plane. So it's an 8-engine plane, still flying. Yeah, Uncle Sam got his money's worth. The last of these was built in 1962, and that's a long time ago. So if the Pentagon ever got paid off for its weapon system, the B-52 is the one, because it still scares the bad guys when it has to. Now, we can go on at that point. I want to show you one thing that the B-52 was primarily designed to do, and that's to deter, to intimidate the Soviet Union. You know, during World War II, we and the Russians were on the same side against Adolf Hitler. Shortly after World War II, if you look at how Berlin developed, for example, it got very tense very quickly. We, the United States, had a monopoly on nuclear weapons for 5 years or so, and we were very careful about those. The Soviets then developed nuclear weapons and began a program of, I'd call it, trying to take over the world for communism and so on. We all saw that. And this is not a political thing. That's a fact. So we had to develop a way to make sure they understood that, okay, you guys have weapons, you can push everybody around, but we have weapons, and we are going to have enough of those to keep you at bay. So the B-52s were on alert a good portion of the time. What you're looking at here is the B-52 area at Westover Air Force Base. You can't get in there very easily. You can't get in there at all, really. If you're a family, you could come down and visit outside. Over on the right there, you see a B-52 on alert. Now, that B-52 is full of gas, obviously, and it also is full of nuclear weapons, and they've got to be very careful. Each of those planes is guarded by an air policeman armed to the teeth, and he has a vicious guard dog with him. And this base and about 30 others around the country had about 7 days at a time on alert, and then another 7 to 10 days off of alert. And we rotated. Over on the left-hand side, you see a barracks. That barracks belonged to the flight crews. And if you might say, well, Jim, if you're on this thing for 7 days, this alert, where's the family? Well, the family is only a mile or two away because it's right on the base housing, and Sharon and by then our 3 girls were living there, and they would come down. They would come down and visit each day. I would have to go out, but stay very close. We had to be able to get off the ground in 13 minutes. Now, how did we figure that out? We had an early warning system up in Alaska, distant early warning, and it would give our base about 13 minutes warning if we were going to come under attack by the Soviet Union. So we could not go far away, but so the girls would come down. One thing Sharon and the girls did, I didn't have a chance to do anything else. I was in the alert facility. They came down in the car, one car in those days, and the 3 girls, and they had with them a couple of puppies. Now, some nice lady across the street from us in the housing area had a litter of puppies, and my 3 little girls saw those, and so it was a question of, Daddy, we want a puppy. So Sharon was helping them out in those days. She drove down, and the 3 daughters, the 2 puppies, and they're all saying, can we have a puppy? You know, it was a loaded deck at that point. And Sharon reminds me that I finally chose a darker one over the white one because the white one relieved himself in the car while they were there. So Sharon had a stacked deck, and that's how it works. But in any event, let's go ahead. We had, that's all right, that's perfectly okay. I'm stepping ahead here in a minute, but I'm going to back up just to tell you that the reason that we have never gone to war with the Soviet Union is because they have never had any doubt about what the result would be. And so they have talked the talk, but I had a Fred, Denny DeLelio, he was on another crew. He and his crew got to go out to Omaha. Omaha is where the Strategic Air Command is located. And they got to go way down below. It's a hardened site, even hardened against nuclear weapons. and they got to see what the entire war plan looked like. Now, in most of you who've been in the service will know that there are certain areas where you don't need to know any more than you need to know to get your job done. Okay, so this guy said, well, Denny DeLelio said, up until now, I have known that our crew was targeted against Moscow. We had trained over and over and over again, trained exactly where to go, where to get refueled, where the weapons were to be delivered, and how to get back out. He says, but I did not know that our weapon was going to be number 32 delivered on Moscow that day. Now that's, who remembers the old saying called overkill? Well, yeah, when Vietnam started, we had to withdraw some of our people and send them over to Vietnam, but there was still plenty of power left, and we made sure that the Soviets understood that. Somebody interviewed the commander-in-chief. Yeah, somebody interviewed the commander-in-chief of Strategic Air Command, and he said, "What's the most important aspect of your job?" And the general said, "Most important aspect of my job is to keep this outfit so strong that nobody would ever dare try to attack us." He says, "I want my opposite number in the Kremlin to go into his boss every morning and say, 'Boss, this is not the day to try to attack the United States.'" And that's close to 50 years ago. That has never happened. That's what deterrence will do for you if the other guy knows there is no way around it. Now I've been jabbering a little bit. What we're doing here is, I've told you now, the primary mission is deterrence, which has worked perfectly so far, thank God. And then we had to withdraw some guys and send them over to the Vietnam area. This is a snapshot of a B-52 at we have 3 bases out for the Vietnam War. One was Thailand, and one was Okinawa, and one was Guam, the island of Guam. Some of you guys have probably been out in some of those areas. This shows conventional weapons. There were no nuclear weapons used. Conventional weapons, 500 pounds apiece, and they fit on the B-52 behind it. 12 500-pounders under the left wing, 12 500-pounders under the right wing, 84 500-pounders inside the bomb bay. So it was 108 500-pound bombs on each of the B-52s, and the planes were flown in cells of 3, and you could put together as many cells as you needed depending on the target that had to be hit. So I think we could probably move ahead a little bit. Now here's a crew. I'm on this page. You probably don't know the page, but the crew, you can't tell. Way on the right is Roger McCausland. He was one of the pilots. I'm next, second from the right. It looks like more hair in those days and fewer wrinkles, but that was me. That was the second pilot. The third one is Jack Sonic. Jack was the radar navigator. That's the guy that used to be called a bombardier because you had to look at the ground and see the target. Now it's done by radars, and Jack was really an expert on that. And he had to be, because we had so many friendly guys on the ground, we didn't want to hit the wrong guys. The fourth guy, the black guy with the glasses, Alex Alexander, he was the navigator. He's the guy who gets you from the starting line to where the bomb run begins. One thing about Alex I'll mention is that after I got out, I was on active duty in that for 10 years. He was reassigned to another crew and another B-52, and it was shot down. It was shot down over North Vietnam. Alex, fortunately, the B-52 crew members have ejection seats that can kick you out of the airplane, and then parachutes open and bring you down. So that worked for him. He was able to escape from the doomed B-52 over North Vietnam, and he was picked up, taken to the infamous Hanoi Hilton. That's where our friend Paul Galani spent almost 7 years. Some of you know Paul. I know we've got Navy guys and all of that here. And so he was fortunate because 3 or 4 months after that, he was released along with all the others. It was like early 73. The next guy is Bob Davis. Now, Bob Davis is from Cuckoo, Virginia. Does anybody here know Cuckoo? Okay. After all these years, I haven't forgotten about Cuckoo. I had to look it up the other day. I said, Bob is from there. Might be a VMI guy. I don't know. It's Cuckoo, Virginia. I think it's about halfway between here and Charlottesville. I'm not sure of that. But some of you guys know it. And then the last guy on the end there, I'll have a little more to tell you about him later. That's Jack Sobey. He's the only enlisted guy on the crew, and he sits way in the back. He's the tail gunner. And Jack had an adventure later on, which I'll come back to on another slide. Okay. If I start talking too much, Fred, just let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ramrods.
Yeah. What we're looking at now is that the B-52 is capable and has to be capable of refueling in the air. And what you're looking at here is the military version, I'm sorry, I need a little more water, a little more version of the Boeing 707. And the purpose of that aircraft is to carry fuel, as Fred has indicated here, gas stations in the sky. And Ramrod is the name. You can see the name on the airplane up just to the right of the crew there. That's an indication that that particular tanker, refueling tanker, was from our base at Westover Air Force Base. Okay.
That's how it's done. Okay.
This is the C-135. Forgive me, I'm going to have to speed up and drink more water. Refueling the B-52. Hard work. The tanker has to be very stable, stable platform for the bomber. The bomber has to come up very slowly, very carefully, and they hook up, and the fuel transfers at the rate of 1,000 gallons per minute. And so when we take off out of a place like Guam, about 3 hours out, you rendezvous with the tanker, which has come down from Okinawa, and you get your fuel and you go on to Vietnam, hit your target, and then come all the way back. So I think we can go ahead. I want to tell you a little bit about Guam. What you see there is a road that goes around Guam. Guam is a small area. It's only about 7 miles wide, 20 or 30 miles long, almost impenetrable jungle. There are a couple of housing areas there. But what you're looking at there is that one road that goes all the way around, and you're looking at a vehicle that has been purchased by a crew that has arrived. And these vehicles kind of turn over. A crew arrives, it's there for 6 months, it leaves, and it sells the vehicle back to the other guys. They have a lot of mileage on them. The one we bought was, I would say, 10, 15 years old, and it cost us a grand total of $25. So we drove it for 6 months, went all around, saw where Magellan had landed and had a big fight years before, saw plenty of places which were still packed with old tanks, rusted out tanks. There was a tremendous battle on Guam in World War II. So it was a kind of an eerie place, but we enjoyed going all around it, and then we sold it to the oncoming crew when we were getting ready to leave, and we sold it to them for $25. So how many times that happened, I'm not exactly sure. Now, here's something that a lot of you guys will remember from the 60s. Who is this? Raquel Welch. Now, why would she be out at Guam, maybe in the holidays? I'm sorry? Yeah, this is our old friend Bob Hope's show, and bless his heart, and rest him, he would bring out the terrific dancers and singers and popular folks, and he had a great band that was with him. Even when I was listening to him on the radio, even before TV, he had this great band. Does anybody remember the name of the band? Les Brown and his band of renown. Okay, and he was very, very popular. And he would come out to Guam, and from Guam he'd go to Thailand and Okinawa and lots of the places in Vietnam. And he was just absolutely wonderful. And I knew that everybody would know her. Let's keep going. I think I'm doing too much talking. Now, I mentioned a moment ago Jack Sobey, our tail gunner. He ran into a situation one day that ended up pretty much funny. This, again, I'm going to ask us to go back to Westover Air Force Base and to the deterrence type mission. We were out on a mission one time. We were in the U.S., so there were no bombs on board, but we were going through the profile that we would have to follow if we had to go attack Russia. Now, Jack is way back. You see the tail back here. Jack is way back there all by himself in a little pressurized cabin, and he has 4 50 caliber machine guns. And the 50 caliber machine guns can put out a whole lot of lead. And it's, as I mentioned a moment ago, there were only 3 bombers in a cell. So you'd have three of these tail gunners all working together. Now, Jack had some trouble one day. Here's the point I'm getting to. He had a pressurized cabin that was starting to leak, and so he had to be brought forward to the front cabin where the other 5 members were. And the only way you can get there is crawling. You have to crawl on a ledge. It's probably 18 inches wide. So he's on his hands and knees crawling forward. And just to his left and 2 or 3 feet below, that's where the bomb bay is. Now, again, no weapons in the bomb bay. We're in the United States. We're doing this business right here. And he started forward. Now, Jack had in his left pocket a very large sandwich, and that was going to be his lunch. So he's carrying this sandwich, and it's one of those big ones. You call it a sub or submarine, or some places call it a hoagie. Up in Massachusetts, has anybody had, we've lived around. In Massachusetts, there is a sandwich like that, but it's called, of all things, a grinder. Has anybody ever heard of a grinder? Okay. In any event, Jack's crawling along next to this empty bomb bay, and his sandwich falls out of his pocket. That's his lunch. Now, Jack has a problem. He has a problem to solve, and the problem is, okay, there are no bombs here. It's not scheduled to open. Do I go off this ledge, pick up my sandwich, and get back on the ledge, or do I just go ahead and hope that somebody up front will share lunch with me? Well, he did the smart thing. He did not get on the bomb bay doors. He just went on up, but the problem was later on he got an awful lot of ribbing because the so-called target was upstate New York, a water town, and there are guys on the ground who can tell if you've had a good bomb or not. They can tell when the bomb bay doors open, and they let you know. And so he became known throughout the wing as the guy who bombed Watertown, New York. So the sandwich went out. Bombay doors opened, the sandwich went out, and Jack Forever After was the guy who bombed Watertown, New York with his grinder sandwich. So here's a little bit. Are we doing okay? I'm going to try.
You all right?
Okay, thanks. You see Guam on here. I'm showing you a little bit about the Marianas Islands. And, we flew out of Guam as the one most distant from Vietnam. Above, not associated with this situation, but the island of Saipan was a tremendous fight in World War II, and an awful lot of people thought the U.S. was going to take over that and kill all the babies and all of that, some crazy stuff. And so there are films showing mothers and children jumping off cliffs and so on. It's called, and there is a cliff with that specific name. So that was a terrible fight. And then there's another little island that we used to go over heading for Vietnam. Yeah, there we are. The takeoff from Guam goes north and then a left turn. And we were going over, excuse me, I need more water. We went over Saipan and also Tinian. Tinian was the base from which the only 2 nuclear weapons ever were taken off. And you look down there, you can still see the runway on Tinian, and you say, well, all the nukes that have ever been used, thank God, originated here. So then there'll be a left turn. Vietnam is 2,500 miles. It's like going from New York to L.A. And then you deliver the weapons on a safe target, safe for our guys, and then came all the way back. We had refueling one time on the way going over there. So this is a picture of the B-52 used appropriately in Vietnam. And I have a little bit of information on that. Bear with me. Dry throat. And I thank Fred for thinking about this water.
Okay. We'll get to the next one here.
Yeah, here we go. We got a letter. There were a couple of places that I had an opportunity to go to see for many days in a row. We were assigned for a while at our base in Thailand, and the base in Thailand had a great advantage for the B-52 crews. The base in Thailand was only about a 5 or 6 hour mission. The one out of Guam was 12 hours, and the one out of Okinawa was about 8 hours. They both involved refueling. Thailand was much closer, 5 or 6 hour flight, no refueling required. And we happened to be there for a month or two at a time when a couple of our organizations were in trouble. This one is in Con Tien, and the other nearby one, which we went to every day, was called Khe Sanh. And we later on got a message, and we helped those guys. The story there was they were both those places. Let's take Con Tien. It was surrounded by bad guys. And the encroachment was there, and our guys were surrounded. So our mission there was to bomb around the area and gradually push the bad guys away, which is what we were able to do in both of those cases. And we got a letter from some Marines. And this letter said, "It is extremely difficult to express the feeling that comes over us when your B-52s drop their payload on the enemy positions around us. To us, it is the greatest morale booster we know, next to a letter from home." So this was signed by two PFC Marines, Kyle Bellin and Roger Moore, 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, A Company, Mortar Section, 3rd Marine Division. So we were able to relieve both of those outfits, and they were able to get freed from what would have been, you know, a disastrous end for them. So that's kind of a quick eye-level view, and I think at this point,
We're done, yeah.
yeah, I think we'll turn it over for questions. Are we okay on time for questions? Okay.
Got 20 minutes left.
Okay, we have, yeah, we always try to end on time or early, you know, and if people need to get up and leave, please do. Yeah, there you go, John.
First question here. How many B-52s did you lose in Vietnam?
We lost about 20, I think. How many did we lose? Yeah.
It's actually 30.
It was between 20 and 30.
Yeah.
When you went on active duty, was the Air Force still using the B-36? And during your time in the Air Force, did you ever meet General Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah, I was having just a little trouble hearing the question. I'm sorry.
I asked, was a B-36 still online with the Air Force?
Yeah, the B-36 was a bigger plane and propeller-driven, 8 engines. We saw that years before down at Eglin Air Force Base. This was like 1962, 63, 62. President Kennedy, John Kennedy, came down for a review of all of the various aircraft, and the B-36 was the biggest one.
Were they still in the inventory when you?
Well, no. By the time we got there, the B-52 was it for a variety of reasons. Does that help? Yes, sir.
When you were in the Strategic Air Command, if you had to bomb Moscow, would you have had enough fuel to get back home?
Okay, can you say that? I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with, maybe if you hold it a little bit further away. It's loud enough.
If you had to fly to Moscow, would you have had enough fuel to get back home?
Well, we had, you know, if we we were stuck out there at least on Guam. If you missed a turn coming back, for example, we had refueling going out to Vietnam. Coming back, we didn't, but we had to make a turn, left turn, at a certain point, or we were heading for Hawaii, which we would not have reached. So.
Let me repeat the question.
Yeah.
If you had to go to Moscow, did you have enough fuel to get out and back?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't understand. I have hearing aids on top of other things too. So thank you. The story on Moscow, and it's a beautiful question, is that the plan was there's enough fuel to hit the target, not to get back here, to hit the target and go to what's called a post-strike base. And there were many countries in that vicinity that would have allowed us to land. And so that's part of the plan is you hit the target and you go land at your post-strike base. And that could have been in many different locations out that way. We could not have gotten back home.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your intro said you graduated from West Point, but you ended up flying B-52s. What happened along the way?
Here's your Army hat.
Well, maybe I got religion. I don't know. No, John knew that question was going to come up, and I wear this hat around all the time, and people are saying, "Okay, how come you're flying for the Air Force?" from the time, can you hear me all right? Okay. From the time of the Wright brothers, 1903, all the way through the end of World War II, and then 2 years later, the Air Force became a separate command. It was part of the Army from the Wright brothers era through World War II, but it had become so big and powerful that it was made a separate service. So at that point, there was an Air Force Academy built and out in Colorado, and the number of people coming out of a place like West Point or Annapolis, they were both putting guys into the Air Force. Typical West Point class coming out during the 30s, 40s, and so on, it would have about 20 or 30% of the guys would go into the Air Corps, Army Air Corps, Army Air Forces, and then it became a separate service. So my class, that class of 60, had shrunk down to where only 10% of the class was sent to the Air Force. And so I was in that 10% group. And thank you for bringing that up. And the one about how do you get to Moscow and do your job and then get out of there alive? Well, there were provisions for that. They may or may not have all been perfect. You know, I think we had some people who had to land at a nearby air base, even though the air base did not know they were coming. Yeah, that was all part of that big plan. So fortunately, it didn't have to occur. Yes, sir.
You just said something that we were talking about here. When you refuel, you're talking about transferring 1,000 gallons a minute, I think it was.
I have to ask Fred to repeat. The hearing aids are not always perfect.
Okay, and it just, we looked up and it's 44,000 gallons of fuel on that buggy. So you had to maintain flying skills within a tight parameter for almost an hour to refuel. Is that about right?
The length of time for refueling, that's basically the question. How long did it take?
I'm glad you brought that up. I take a lot of grief from our good friend Paul Galante on that. Who knows Paul? He was a POW for almost 7 years, and he's a great guy, and he's over at Westminster, Canterbury right now. Yeah, he was a Navy carrier pilot and shot down almost 7 years as a prisoner. Terrific guy. And he's always telling me how much greater the Navy pilots are than the Air Force pilots and all this stuff. And he knows that I always have the same response. I say, well, now, Paul, when that fighter airplane you're flying comes up behind the tanker and it's time for you to fill up your tanks on, how long does that take on that fighter? And he says, about 2 minutes. I said, well, it takes us 20 minutes. And he said, okay, you're right. So he acknowledges that the work that the pilots in the B-52s do behind that tanker is long and tedious, and the arms are just so tired after that. So,
And just a curiosity question, when the B-52 dropped its load, how much of an altitude bounce did you get?
How did it affect the altitude of the bomber when you dropped the load?
oh,
How did the plane behave?
there's always talk about that. It didn't seem to change at all. The bombs weighed 60,000 pounds, and the aircraft weighed 500,000 pounds. So it didn't seem to really make a difference. I appreciate your patience because of these hearing aids.
I want to ask you about the B-2 flights from the States to Iran. Those guys flew for 33 hours. How do you do that? I think you told me you flew 23 hours one time, but
It was amazing to me because first of all, the mission appeared to be just unbelievably successful from what little I could see on TV. And the primary mission, which was going to Iran, was masked to some degree by an alternate mission out to Guam, and it was designed to confuse an enemy. And there were only two pilots on a B-2, and no other crew members. So there's technology going on there that I don't understand, but I think it's just looking at it from the standpoint of the fatigue of the pilots. We were still in our 20s, maybe 30 years old, and by the time we would get back to Guam, having made one of those missions, we were so tired we could barely get off the darned airplane. But so how these guys were able to do 36, I've heard 36 hours in that airplane, numerous refuelings along the way, and they had to bring them back. That is beyond my understanding at this point. They haven't released much information on the mission, but it appears that it was a tremendous mission. All I know is that 16 or 18 hours on a mission like that from Guam was enough to wear out a bomber crew.
Thank you. Anybody else? One more question.
Did you ever meet General Jimmy Stewart?
What was that?
Did you ever meet General Jimmy Stewart?
Did you ever meet Jimmy Stewart, General Jimmy Stewart?
Did I ever meet him? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. He was older than I am.
Let's give Jim a big hand here.
Have to show and tell, the license plate.
Thank you for your service.
We got that license plate.
The license plate. We have a show.
No, I want to tell you, I just want to tell you something. I got this license plate a number of years ago, and I had a guy stop me. I was out on Parham Road, about 2 or 3 miles from here, pulled up at the light, and some guy pulled up next to me, and he was shouting and waving, and I said, did I cut him off accidentally? Is he going to want to fight me? Does he have a gun in his pocket? And he had me roll the window down. He says, buddy, did you fly a B-52 in Vietnam? And I said, yes. And he said, buddy, you saved my butt. That made my day.
Next month, Al and Fred and Dan Balfour will present the program, and see you then.
I want to ask us, just hold your applause for 1 second. This is this guy's last time in 5 years. He needs a round of applause.